The small ship drifted through the debris field, its engines dark, its life support systems running on minimal power. Inside, Hana Kim sat very still, her eyes fixed on the scanner display. The blue dots moving across the screen meant only one thing. The Vexari had found her again. Hana was the last free human in the galaxy. At least that's what all evidence suggested. For 15 years, she had moved from hiding place to hiding place, staying one step ahead of the aliens who had destroyed Earth and hunted her people to near extinction. Not today, she whispered to herself, carefully adjusting her ship's position behind a large chunk of what had once been a mining platform. The debris field around Proxima Centauri had been her home for nearly 6 months now. She knew its hiding spots and blind corners better than anyone. A warning light flashed on her console. Heat sensors. The Vexari were using heat sensors now, which meant they could detect her body temperature even with all systems powered down. Hana was 43 years old, though she looked older. Her once black hair now had streaks of gray. Deep lines marked her face around her eyes and mouth. Before the war, she had been a cultural anthropologist at Seoul University. How strange that her training in understanding alien cultures had kept her alive when military personnel and politicians had fallen first. She reached for the emergency thruster controls. If she timed it right, she might be able to use the debris field to slip away one more time. Her fingers hesitated over the button. On the scanner, the Vexari ships were changing formation. Not the usual search pattern. They were coordinating, creating a net they had learned from previous encounters. Fine, Hana said. Let's see how smart you really are. She fired the thrusters, sending her small ship spinning through the field. Metal scraped against her hull as she narrowly missed a jagged piece of satellite. The Vexari ships immediately adjusted, some moving to block potential escape routes while others gave chase. Hana's hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. This dance had become familiar over the years. The irony wasn't lost on her. That she, a scholar who had once spent her days in libraries and classrooms, had become an expert in evasive spaceflight. A larger piece of debris loomed ahead. Hana aimed straight for it, then cut her engines at the last second, letting momentum carry her ship into a natural hollow in the structure. It wouldn't fool them for long, but it might buy her a few minutes to think. The Vexari had come to Earth 20 years ago. At first they seemed peaceful. They shared some technology, established diplomatic relations, studied human culture with what appeared to be genuine interest. What humans didn't understand then was that the Vexari were studying them the way scientists study potentially dangerous bacteria, with clinical detachment and contingency plans for containment. When Earth's governments refused to join the Vexari Imperium as a managed protectorate, the aliens revealed their true perspective. Humans were too unpredictable, too emotional, too chaotic to be allowed free rein in the galaxy. For the greater order, humanity would need to be either rehabilitated or removed. The war lasted 10 years. It wasn't even close. Vexari technology was centuries beyond Earth's. They didn't use planet-destroying weapons, they didn't need to. Precision strikes on military installations, government centers, and infrastructure were enough. When the resistance continued, they began systematic processing of the population. Hana's scanner beeped. 3 Vexari ships were converging on her position. No more time for memories. She fired the engines again, this time making a desperate break for the edge of the debris field. If she could reach open space, she might be able to make a blind jump to hyperspace before they locked on with tractor beams. Her ship cleared the last floating piece of metal and accelerated hard. The stars stretched before her, promising freedom, if she could just hold on a little longer. The ship shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across the console. A tractor beam had her. Hana slumped in her seat. She had evaded capture 157 times by her count. Perhaps it was inevitable that attempt 158 would fail. Through her viewport, she saw the massive Vexari command ship growing larger. Unlike human vessels, Vexari ships had no wasted space, no decorative elements. They were perfect geometric shapes. This, one a series of interconnected hexagons gleaming silver against the darkness of space. As her ship was pulled into a docking bay, Hana quickly accessed her computer. With practiced motions, she activated the data purge program she had prepared years ago. All her records of human outposts, all the cultural archives she had salvaged from Earth's libraries, all the music and art she had carried with her, all of it encrypted and hidden in places the Vexari would never think to look. If they wanted humanity's soul, they would have to find it themselves. The docking bay was brightly lit and clinically clean. As soon as her ship touched down, it was surrounded by Vexari security officers. They were tall, slender beings with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their faces were humanoid, but with sharper, more angular features. They had no visible ears, just subtle indentations where ears would be on a human. Their eyes were large and entirely silver, with no visible pupils. The boarding ramp of her ship was forced open. Hana stood waiting. There was no point in hiding now. 4 security officers entered, their movements perfectly coordinated as if they shared one mind. Behind them came another Vexari, different from the others. He wore what Hana recognized as a commander's uniform, and his bearing suggested authority. "Hana Kim," the commander said, his voice surprisingly melodic, despite the flatness of his tone. "I am Commander Day of the Imperial Enforcement Division." Hana said nothing. She had learned that silence often revealed more about the Vexari than questions did. "You have led us on an impressive series of evasions," Commander Day continued. "Your adaptability is noted and will be studied." "I'm flattered," Hana replied dryly. The commander tilted his head slightly. A gesture Hana had learned indicated curiosity among the Vexari. "You will be taken to Nexus Prime for processing," he said. "Your resistance is officially terminated." As the security officers placed restraints on her wrists, Commander Day stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're the last one," he told her. "The final unprocessed human in our records." Hana's heart tightened in her chest. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made the weight of what she carried inside her, the memories, the songs, the stories of Earth, suddenly feel so much heavier. She looked directly into Commander Day's silver eyes. She saw no cruelty there, only curiosity and perhaps something else she couldn't quite identify. "If I'm truly the last," Hana said quietly, "then you should study me carefully. I contain multitudes." The commander's expression didn't change, but something in his posture suggested her words had reached him in some way. As they led her from her ship, Hana took one last look at the small space that had been her home for so long. Then she straightened her shoulders and walked forward into captivity, her mind already turning to what might come next. The last free human was captured, but Hana Kim was not defeated. Not yet. The journey to Nexus Prime took 7 days. Hana spent those days in a holding cell aboard Commander Day's ship. The cell was not uncomfortable, just empty. A bed that adjusted to her body shape. A small washing area with water that came on when she waved her hand. Food that appeared twice daily through a slot in the wall. No windows, no books. No one to talk to except when Commander Day visited to ask his questions. "Why did humans build cities in places prone to natural disasters?" he asked on the 2nd day. "Why did your species spend resources on art that served no practical function?" he asked on the 4th. "Why did humans keep singing even after your cities were destroyed?" he asked on the 6th. Hana answered each question briefly. She knew the Vexari were recording everything, building a final record of human behavior before she was processed. She would give them facts, but not her heart, never her heart. On the 7th day, the ship's engines changed tone. They had arrived. 2 guards came to escort her to the shuttle bay. Through the viewport of the small transport that took them down to the planet's surface, Hana got her first glimpse of the Vexari homeworld. Nexus Prime was beautiful in a cold, perfect way. The cities were built of crystalline towers that caught the light of the planet's blue sun. Everything was arranged in geometric patterns. No chaos, no random elements. Even the few visible parks had trees planted in precise rows and ponds shaped in perfect circles. The shuttle landed at a large complex near the center of the main city. Unlike the gleaming towers around it, This building was low and gray, with few windows. The containment center. "You will be held here for study before processing," Commander Day explained as they walked through spotless corridors. "Your cooperation will make this time easier for you." "What exactly is processing?" Hana asked. It was the first time she had asked a direct question. Commander Day glanced at her, his silver eyes unreadable. "Your neural pathways will be adjusted to remove emotional responses that lead to chaos. You will retain knowledge and skills, but not the unpredictable elements of human nature. So I'll stop being human. You will become better," he corrected. "More logical, more peaceful." They stopped at a door that slid open silently. Inside was a room about 5 meters square. It contained a bed, a chair, a small table, and a washing area separated by a partial wall. One wall was entirely transparent, though Hana suspected it would appear solid from the other side. "This will be your home for the next phase," Commander Day said. "The observation period typically lasts 3 months. Hana walked into the room, her footsteps echoing slightly. "And then?" "And then processing. Then peace." Commander Day hesitated, something Hana had never seen a Vexari do before. "Is there anything you require for comfort during your stay?" Hana turned to face him. "A window, even a small one. Humans need to see the sky." The commander made a note on his tablet. "I will consider this request." After he left, Hana explored her new prison. The bed adjusted to her body just like the one on the ship. The washing area had soap that smelled of nothing. The transparent wall gave her a view of an empty corridor. She wondered how many other cells lined that corridor, and how many other species had been studied here before being processed into proper Vexari citizens. The first week passed slowly. Each day followed the same pattern. Food appeared 3 times. Scientists came to observe her, sometimes asking questions, sometimes just watching how she ate or moved or sat. Medical scans were taken daily, blood samples every 3rd day. On the 8th day, a small square of the wall opposite her bed changed. It became transparent, showing a patch of sky. Nexus Prime's blue sun made everything outside look slightly unreal, but Hana was grateful nonetheless. She sat for hours just watching clouds move across that small square of freedom. Commander Day visited again on the 10th day. "The window meets your needs?" he asked. "Yes," Hana said. "Thank you. Your brain scans show increased activity in the pleasure centers when you look at it. Interesting that something so simple could affect neural function." Hana almost smiled. "Humans have a deep connection to nature, to growing things, to the sky. Yet you built cities that blocked the sky and destroyed natural environments," the commander observed. "We were complicated," Hana admitted. "Full of contradictions." The commander made a note. "Contradictions lead to inefficiency. Processing removes such obstacles." As the days turned to weeks, Hana noticed changes in the observation routine. The same scientists came back more frequently. Commander Day's visits became regular every 3rd day. Their conversations grew longer. He seemed particularly interested in human art and music. "Our records show humans devoted significant resources to activities with no survival benefit," he said during one visit. "Dancing, painting, music. Even when your cities were falling, some humans continued these behaviors." "They weren't behaviors," Hana corrected. "They were expressions of our humanity." "Explain." Hana considered her words carefully. "Humans needed to create beauty as much as we needed food or shelter. It was how we processed our existence, how we shared our inner selves with others." "Inner selves," the commander repeated, his head tilting in that gesture of curiosity. "You mean consciousness?" "More than consciousness. Spirit, soul. The part of us that feels wonder when we see the stars." Commander Day was silent for a long moment. "The Vexari once had art," he finally said. "Very long ago, before the Great Rationalization. There are artifacts in our museums." This surprised Hana. She leaned forward. What happened during this great rationalization? We evolved, he said simply. We recognized that emotions led to conflict, to waste, to suffering. We engineered such inefficiencies out of our genetic code over generations. And you're happier now? The commander's expression showed genuine confusion. Happiness is an emotional state. We seek balance and purpose. It is superior to the chaos of happiness and sadness. That night, lying on her bed and staring at her small window of sky now filled with unfamiliar stars, Hana made a decision. If she was truly the last free human, if all the others were gone or processed, then she had a responsibility she had not asked for but could not deny. She began to hum softly, a lullaby her grandmother had sung to her as a child, a simple melody passed down through generations. The next morning, the scientist who came to observe her asked why she had made sounds during her sleep cycle. I was singing, Hana explained. For what purpose? The scientist asked, making notes. It helps me remember. Remember what? Hana looked directly at the scientist, then at the recording devices she knew were hidden in the walls. What it means to be human. After that, Hana sang every night. Sometimes old songs from Earth, sometimes melodies she created herself. She sang softly, always when the lights were dimmed for sleep cycle, her eyes on that small patch of alien sky. She noticed that the night observation shift began to have the same staff members repeatedly. They were listening, studying this strange, human behavior. During his next visit, Commander Day asked about the singing. Our scientists report vocalization during your sleep cycle. Is this a form of communication? It's a form of survival, Hana replied. The commander waited for her to explain further, but she remained silent. After a moment, he changed the subject. 2 months into her confinement, Hana noticed something new. When she sang at night, sometimes there would be a shadow that paused outside her cell, visible through the transparent wall. Someone standing in the corridor listening. Several times that someone was Commander Day. Hana began to choose her songs more carefully. She sang the oldest songs she could remember, songs about home and longing, about stars and mountains, about love and loss, the universal experiences that connected all humans across time and space. If she was going to be processed, if her humanity was going to be erased, she would make sure that the last record of humankind included their music, their emotions, their soul. What she didn't know then was that someone else was listening too, someone who would change everything. 3 months passed in the containment center. Hana marked the days by scratching tiny lines on the underside of her bed frame where the cameras couldn't see. Her window to the sky had become her clock, her calendar, her connection to something larger than her cell. The routine rarely changed. Wake at the same time, eat the same food, answer the same questions from different scientists. Watch Commander Day take notes on her responses, sing in the darkness before sleep. Until the day everything changed. Hana was sitting on her bed watching the blue sun of Nexus Prime slowly move across her window square. The door to her cell slid open, and Commander Day entered. There will be visitors today, he said without greeting. Educational purposes. Hana looked up, curious. Visitors? Young Vexari. What humans would call children, though our maturation process differs significantly from yours. He paused, studying her reaction. They come to learn about alien species being prepared for integration. You mean they come to see the zoo animals before they're turned into robots? Hana said flatly. Commander Day's expression didn't change, but his posture stiffened slightly. Processing is not robotic. It is refinement. Hana didn't argue. She had learned when to save her energy. The educational group will pass by your cell in 2 hours, Commander Day continued. You need not do anything special. Simply continue your normal behaviors. After he left, Hana paced her small cell. Children, young Vexari who were still learning, still forming their understanding of the universe. She wondered if they were truly like Vexari adults, or if they still had some spark of the emotions their society had engineered away. An idea began to form in her mind. A small rebellion, perhaps her last. 2 hours later, she heard them coming. The soft sound of many feet moving in perfect sync. The low murmur of a guide explaining the purpose of the containment center, the importance of studying alien species, the benefits of processing. Hana moved to the center of her cell and stood perfectly still, facing the transparent wall. She could see them now, filing past in a neat line. 20 young Vexari, all dressed in identical silver-gray uniforms. Their skin was the same pale blue as the adults, but their silver eyes seemed somehow larger, more curious. An adult Vexari led, the group pointing to Hana as they passed. "This is the final unprocessed human specimen," the guide explained. Humans were a Class 3 civilization with significant emotional instability. Their integration has been particularly challenging due to neural resistance to logical restructuring. The young Vexari stared at Hana with open curiosity. Their faces were still, but their eyes moved quickly, taking in every detail of her appearance. Hana looked back at them. Then, just as the last young Vexari was about to pass her cell, she began to sing. She chose carefully. Not a sad song, which might seem like manipulation. Not an angry song which would confirm Vexari beliefs about human volatility. Instead, she sang a very old folk song from her grandmother's homeland. A song about mountains and rivers, about dawn breaking over a peaceful valley, about the cycle of seasons and the enduring beauty of the natural world. She sang in Korean, knowing the Vexari translation systems would struggle with the nuances, the emotional resonances of certain words that had no direct equivalent in the Vexari language. The effect was immediate. The line of young Vexari stopped moving. Their guide turned, surprise briefly cracking through the practiced neutrality of her expression. "Continue moving," the guide ordered. This display is simply a common human vocalization pattern with no significance. But the children didn't move. They stood watching Hana, listening. One child near the back of the group tilted its head in the gesture of Vexari curiosity. Hana continued singing, her voice growing stronger. She had been a good singer once before the war, before the years of hiding. Now her voice was rougher, but that somehow made the song more genuine, more human. She sang about sunrise over mountains that no longer existed on a planet that was lost. She sang about the feeling of cool water on bare feet in summer. She sang about sitting with family around a warm fire when snow fell outside. The guide moved among the children, trying to herd them forward, away from Hana's cell. Some reluctantly began to move, but several remained, still watching, still listening. One child, smaller than the others, took a step closer to the transparent wall. Its large silver eyes were fixed on Hana with an intensity that seemed un-Vexari. For just a moment, Hana thought she saw something flicker in those eyes, something like wonder. Alarms suddenly blared in the corridor. Red lights flashed. The guide grabbed the remaining children and hurried them away. Security officers appeared, moving with urgent purpose. The transparent wall of Hana's cell turned, opaque, cutting off her view of the corridor. Hana finished her song anyway, singing to an audience she could no longer see. Hours later, Commander Day came to her cell. His usual calm seemed disturbed. There was a tension around his eyes, a stiffness in his movements that Hana had never seen before. "What did you do?" he demanded. Hana sat calmly on her bed. "I sang a song about mountains." "You disrupted an educational tour. Security protocols were activated. The students had to be removed from the facility." "Because of a song?" Commander Day paced the small cell, another unprecedented behavior. The song's mathematical structure follows patterns that resonate with developing Vexari neural pathways. He stopped and looked directly at Hana. "You knew this would happen." Hana shook her head. "I knew nothing of the kind. I simply sang a song from my home, a song about beauty and peace." The commander studied her face, searching for deception. "The young ones are still developing their emotional suppression. They're Neural pruning is incomplete until their 12th cycle. He frowned. Your song caused unusual brain activity in several of them. They are being examined now. Did I hurt them? Hana asked, suddenly concerned. No, Commander Day admitted, but you confused them. He seemed to struggle with how to express what had happened. They asked questions about the song, about what it described, about why it made them feel different. Hana tried not to show her surprise. Feel different. The Vexari children had felt something when she sang. What questions did they ask? She asked carefully. Commander Day hesitated, then answered. One asked what mountains look like at sunrise. Another asked why humans would sit by fire when environmental controls exist. The smallest one, Tay, asked what the song meant when it spoke of hearts filled with memory. Hana nodded slowly. These are natural questions for children. Not for Vexari children, Commander Day said sharply. Our education ensures logical inquiry from the earliest stages. These questions had no practical purpose. They had the most important purpose, Hana said quietly. Understanding what it means to be alive in the universe. Commander Day was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, almost private. Your processing date has been moved forward. The High Council feels your presence is potentially disruptive. Hana felt a chill pass through her. How soon? 3 days. The commander would not meet her eyes. I argued for continued study, but they believe the risk outweighs any further scientific benefit. That night, after Commander Day left, Hana sat by her window and looked at the unfamiliar stars. 3 days. 3 days until everything she was, everything humans had been, would be erased from the galaxy. She sang again, but very softly. A lullaby this time. Something gentle, something that spoke of safety and peace. She sang as if there were children, listening, even though she knew the corridor was surely empty. What she didn't know was that in various homes across the capital city of Nexus Prime, young Vexari were lying awake, remembering a melody they had heard only once but could not forget. One of them, the smallest one named Tay, was doing something no Vexari child had done in generations. Tay was dreaming of mountains at sunrise, though he had never seen mountains, dreaming of feelings he had no names for, dreaming of a human woman who sang of things that logic couldn't explain. Tay could not stop thinking about the human song. It followed him through his daily activities like a shadow that could not be seen but somehow still existed. He was the child of Director Mina, who supervised the science division of the containment center. At 9 cycles old, Tay was considered gifted even by Vexari standards. His logical processing abilities tested in the highest percentile. His emotional suppression training was ahead of schedule. He was exactly what a young Vexari should be, until he heard the human sing. That night, after returning from the containment center, Tay sat at his study terminal, trying to focus on his assignments, but the melody kept running through his mind, interfering with his concentration. Your neural patterns show irregularities, his mother observed when she checked on him. Did something disturb you during the educational tour? Tay knew he should report the strange feelings. That was the proper Vexari response. But instead he said, the environmental controls in the containment center were set to a different temperature. It required physical adjustment. It was the first time he had ever said something untrue. The concept of lying was theoretically covered in cultural studies of less evolved species, but no Vexari would engage in such illogical behavior. His mother accepted the explanation and left him to his studies. But Tay could not study. Instead, he searched the Vexari knowledge database for information about humans, about music, about mountains at sunrise. The database contained facts but no experiences. It told him that mountains were elevated land masses, but not what they looked like with light breaking over them. It explained that music was organized sound, but not why the human song had made him feel as if his chest contained something expanding. That night, when his mother believed he was in his rest cycle, Tay did something no Vexari child was supposed to do. He left their home unit and took the silent transport tube back to the containment center. His mother's security clearance, stored in the family genetic signature, gave him access to the observation level above the cells. He knew which one held the human. Cell 7, Section 3. He had memorized it without intending to. The observation deck was empty at this late hour. Tay moved to the viewpoint above Cell 7 and looked down. The human was there, sitting by the small window, looking at the night sky. She seemed to be making marks on something, though Tay could not see what. Then she began to sing again. A different song this time. Softer, slower. Tay did not understand the words, but something about the sound made his chest feel strange again. Tight, but also warm. He stayed for 23 minutes, listening, until a security patrol forced him to hide and then leave. On the transport tube home, he realized his face was wet. He touched the moisture on his cheeks, confused. His body was producing tears. This was a physiological response the Vexari had engineered away generations ago. The next day, Tai told his friend June about the human and the song. June had also been on the educational tour. He too had been having trouble concentrating on his studies. I had a dream, June confessed in a whisper as they sat in the learning center. I saw colors that do not exist. This was even more shocking than Tai's tears. Vexari did not dream. Dreams were inefficient neural activity that had been eliminated from their sleep cycles through genetic modification. I want to hear her sing again, Tay said. June looked nervous but nodded. I will come with you. That night, 2 young Vexari snuck back to the containment center. The night after that, there were 5. The 5th night, there were 12. They gathered on the observation deck, silent and careful not to be detected, and listened to Hana sing. Each night she sang something different, sometimes happy songs that made the children want to move their bodies in strange ways, sometimes sad songs that made their chests ache, sometimes slow, gentle songs that made them feel safe in a way they could not explain. Commander Day noticed the unusual access logs to the observation deck. Security protocols were recording no physical presence despite genetic signatures being detected. Someone was overriding the system. He decided to investigate personally. The night before Hana was scheduled for processing, he went to the observation deck after hours and found 15 young Vexari sitting in a circle, watching the human below. His first instinct was to trigger the security alarm. These children were being exposed to potentially harmful emotional stimuli, but curiosity, that most dangerous of scientific impulses, made him pause. He stepped back into the shadows and watched. Below, Hana was singing again. This song seemed different from what she normally sang in her sleep cycle. It had a rhythm that reminded Day of the old heartbeat monitors used in medical facilities before neural tracking was developed. A steady pulse that seemed to synchronize with something deep and forgotten. The children were completely still, their attention entirely focused on the human. Their faces, normally so controlled, showed subtle changes. Widened eyes, parted lips. One small child, who Day recognized as Director Mina's son Tai, had moisture on his face again. Commander Day was so focused on observing the children that he did not immediately notice when Hana stopped singing and looked up, directly at the observation deck. She could not possibly see through the one-way transparency, and yet her eyes seemed to find his in the darkness. She spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the audio system. I know you're listening, all of you, the children, and you, Commander. The children froze, looking at each other in alarm. Don't be afraid, Hana continued. I'm glad you came. I want you to understand what will be lost tomorrow. Commander Day stepped forward, revealing himself to the children, who looked up at him. In surprise and fear, you should not be here, he told them. Return to your homes immediately. Please, said Tay, speaking out of turn, another violation of Vexari protocol. Let her sing one more song before we go. Commander Day should have refused. He should have called security. He should have reported this serious breach to the High Council immediately. Instead, he looked down at Hana. One song, then they must leave. Hana nodded. She stood in the center of her cell and closed her eyes for a moment. When she began to sing, it was not in Korean this time, but in the Vexari language. She had learned it during her months of captivity. The HFY song was simple. It spoke of stars that watch over sleeping children, of dreams that connect all thinking beings across the galaxy, of how even the most different species share the same wonder when they look up at the night sky. The children listened, their eyes wide. One by one, more tears appeared on their faces, not just Tay now, but all of them. Tears that no Vexari had shed in hundreds of years. Commander Day felt something in his own chest, a tightness, a warmth, a sensation he had no name for because it had been engineered out of his species long before he was born. When Hana finished singing, the silence that followed seemed to hold something new and fragile. "What is happening to us?" June asked, looking at the wetness on his hands where he had touched his face. "You are remembering," Hana answered, "remembering what your ancestors knew before they forgot." "Enough," Commander Day said. "Return to your homes. Say nothing of this to anyone." The children reluctantly left, moving past him with their eyes downcast. Tay was the last to go. He stopped beside Commander Day and looked up at him. "Will I forget her song after she is processed?" the child asked. Commander Day had no answer that seemed logical. "Go home, Tay." After all the children had gone, Commander Day remained on the observation deck, looking down at Hana. She sat on her bed watching him through the one-way transparency as if she could see him perfectly. "They are just children," Commander Day said through the communication system. "Their emotional controls are still developing. This means nothing." "If it means nothing," Hana replied, "then why are you afraid?" Commander Day left without answering. He returned to his own living unit, and for the first time in his adult life could not settle into his rest cycle. His mind kept returning to the tears on the children's faces, to the strange tightness in his own chest, to the words of Hana's song. That night, in homes across the city, 15 young Vexari lay awake, feeling things they had no words for. And in the home of the most prominent scientific family on Nexus Prime, Tay made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, before the human was processed, he would make the other adults hear her song too. Dawn came to Nexus Prime with the blue sun rising over perfect crystal towers. In the containment center, preparations were already underway for the processing of the last human. Hana woke early. She had slept little, knowing what the day would bring. She stood by her small window, watching the blue light grow stronger, and wondered if this would be the last sunrise she would truly see. After processing, she might still have eyes to observe the sun, but would she feel its beauty? Would she care? She heard the door to her cell slide open. She turned, expecting to see Commander Day or the medical team. Instead, a technician she had never seen before entered. "Preparation for transfer will begin in 1 hour," the technician said, placing a tray of food on her table. "Consume nutrition and prepare yourself." Hana nodded. As the technician turned to leave, she asked, "May I make one request?" The technician paused. "What request?" "I would like to sing one last song before processing, for record purposes, to complete your study of human behavior." The technician seemed uncertain. "I will consult with supervisors." He left quickly, the door sealing behind him. Hana did not touch the food. Instead, she sat on her bed and waited. She had done all she could. She had shared her songs with the only listeners available. Whether it would matter in the end, she did not know. Across the city, young Tai moved with purpose. Before the first education cycle of the day, he had sent messages to all the children who had heard the human sing. They agreed to meet at the main entrance to the containment center at the time when Hana would be transferred to the processing facility. The plan was simple, but unprecedented. Vexari children did not disobey schedules. They did not miss educational cycles. They did not organize without adult supervision. What Tai was doing violated every social protocol of their society. Tai's mother had already left for her duties at the science division when he slipped out of their living unit. On the transport tube to the containment center, he felt something new. His heart was beating faster, his breathing was irregular, He recognized this from his biological studies as a stress response, something modern Vexari rarely experience due to their emotional regulation. He was afraid, but he kept going. At the containment center, Commander Day was reviewing the processing authorization one last time. His aide approached him with a message. The human requests permission to perform a final vocalization for record purposes. Commander Day hesitated. Protocol dictated no special accommodations before processing, yet his scientific curiosity argued that documenting this final human behavior would have research value. Request granted. Record all vocal patterns for later analysis. The aide nodded and left to relay the permission. Commander Day turned back to his screen, but found it difficult to focus. The memory of children with tears on their faces kept intruding on his thoughts. An alert flashed on his screen, a security notification from the main entrance. He accessed the surveillance feed and froze in shock. Children, dozens of them, standing in silence outside the main doors of the containment center. Not just the 15 who had been on the observation deck the night before, but many more, at least 50 young Vexari, all standing perfectly still, facing the entrance. At the front of the group stood Tay. Commander Day called his security chief. "What is happening at the main entrance?" "Unknown, Commander. The children are not responding to instructions to disperse. We are contacting their family units. Do not engage until I arrive," Commander Day ordered. He hurried to the entrance, passing confused staff members along the way. When he reached the main hall, he found even more children had arrived. Security officers stood uncertainly at the doors, facing the silent gathering outside. Commander Day opened the doors and stepped outside. The children's eyes turned to him. Their faces were different from any Vexari children he had ever seen. They showed expressions that had been bred out of their species generations ago. "What is the purpose of this gathering?" he asked, addressing Tay. "We came for the song," Tay answered. "We want to hear the human sing before she is processed." Commander Day frowned. "This is highly irregular. You should all return to your scheduled activities immediately." None of the children moved. Instead, more transport tubes arrived, bringing adults. Parents searching for their missing children. Officials responding to reports of the disturbance. Members of the High Council, alerted to this unprecedented social disorder. "What is happening here?" demanded High Counselor Nari, pushing through the crowd. She was the head of the processing division and the most senior official present. Before Commander Day could answer, his communication device signaled an urgent message. "Commander, the human transfer team reports they cannot reach the processing chamber. The interior corridors are blocked." "Blocked by what?" Commander Day asked. "By children, sir. More children." Inside the containment center, Hana was being led from her cell by 2 security officers. They had allowed her request to sing one last song before processing. She had just finished when they received alerts on their communication devices. "Delay in transfer procedure," one officer told the other. "Route to processing chamber is obstructed." They stopped at an intersection of corridors, waiting for instructions. Then Hana heard it. Footsteps. Many footsteps, coming from the direction they had been heading. Around the corner came a group of young Vexari, 20 or more, walking slowly, their eyes fixed on Hana. The security officers moved to block them. "Return to your assigned areas immediately," ordered the lead officer. The children did not respond to the order. They simply stood, looking at Hana. Then from the back of the group a small voice spoke. "Will you sing for us again?" It was Tay. He had somehow gotten inside and gathered this second group of children. The security officers looked at each other in confusion. They had no protocol for this situation. "This is highly irregular," said one officer. "We must proceed to the processing chamber." "The path is blocked," said the other, requesting instructions from command. While they were distracted, Tay moved closer to Hana. "I brought them to hear you," he whispered. "Like you said, to understand what will be lost." Hana looked at the faces of the children. She saw something there that she had thought was gone from the Vexari forever. Curiosity, wonder, feeling. "Would you like me to sing now?" she asked them. The children nodded, some of them smiling. Smiling, an expression that had not been seen on Vexari faces in centuries. So Hana sang. She sang the most beautiful song she knew, an ancient earth lullaby about hopes and dreams and the bonds between hearts that could never be broken. She sang as if her life depended on it. Perhaps it did. The children listened, their eyes wide. And then something happened that neither Hana nor the security officers were prepared for. The children began to weep. Tears flowed down their blue faces. Some made soft sounds like choked sobs. Others reached for each other's hands, an act of physical connection that Vexari never engaged in without practical purpose. The security officers stepped back, clearly disturbed by what they were seeing. "What is happening to them?" one asked, his voice showing emotion for the first time. Before anyone could answer, more adults arrived, drawn by reports of the disturbance. Parents, scientists, security personnel, officials from the High Council. Commander Day and High Counselor Nari pushed through the crowd. They all stopped, stunned by the sight before them. Children crying, children holding hands. Children showing emotions that had been engineered out of Vexari society generations ago. "What have you done to them?" High Counselor Nari demanded, her perfect Vexari composure cracking with something like fear. Hana looked at the High Counselor, calmly. "I did nothing to them. I only reminded them of what they already knew somewhere deep inside. What all sentient beings know from birth." Tay stepped forward, tears still on his face. He looked up at the adults, at his own mother who had just arrived, her face showing shock at her son's condition. "I had a dream," Tay said, his voice clear and strong despite his tears. "I dreamed of mountains I have never seen, and feelings I have no names for. I dreamed of what we were before we forgot how to dream." High Counselor Nari turned to Commander Day. "This is your fault. You allowed this human to corrupt our children with emotional contagion. Processing must begin immediately." The dumb security officers moved to take Hana away, but they found their path blocked again, this time by more than just children. Some of the adults, parents who had come looking for their children, now stood with them, and they too had tears on their faces. "If we destroy what makes them human," Tay said, looking directly at the High Counselor, "we destroy what once made us alive." The words hung in the air, impossible to ignore. The High Counselor looked around at the gathered Vexari, at the tears and expressions she had never seen before, at the breakdown of order she had spent her life maintaining. "This cannot be allowed," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Commander Day stepped forward. "I propose an alternative solution. Instead of processing the human, we could learn from her. Study this response she has awakened in our children. Perhaps there is value we have overlooked in our pursuit of perfect logic." The room fell silent. Such a suggestion was revolutionary, a challenge to centuries of Vexari development. Then, from the crowd of adults, another voice spoke. "I support this proposal.